Today I want to talk about a specific case study in disruption, and that is education. Clayton Christensen has spoken about this at length, that education across the whole board is ripe for disruption. I want to talk about this today and also connect it to the innovator's dilemma, in particular, chapters 1 to 4, where the question is, why do companies always go up market and leave a vacuum for lower end disruptors? The Not Even Wrong podcast. It's November 13th, 2020. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is up 85 basis points. The market's up 1.3%. For the year, we're up 204%. The market's up 11%. We're outperforming by 193%. Christensen talks about the disruption in the education market. What he means with that is that the education market, through the private school system in the United States and also the private college system, of course, is ripe for disruption. I'm going to discuss his thoughts the way I understand them. Then I'm going to discuss the potential for disruption. Why is there even a potential? What is changing from the bottom? And we're going to use Christensen's methodology, which is the disruptors come with new technology and new processes, and they usually come from the bottom. We're then going to discuss why the incumbents potentially are not concerned about this and not doing anything about it. And then we're going to have some conclusions and tie the whole thing together with the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, which is the book we're discussing in this particular period. So first of all, the US education is very, very focused on private education. It starts with elementary school, middle school, high school, college. Everything is private. In particular, the bigger cities, the bigger agglomerations, so the bigger places where there's a lot of diversity and a lot of different types of educational profiles, we see the proliferation of private education. And then when it comes to the academic side, again, private versus public, usually the private school system is in a better position to position themselves to capture value. So this is not, I am not talking now about, let's say, which school is better, that school or this school. I'm not talking about should you send your school to private or public school. This is not the topic of this conversation. What I'm talking about here is, in particular, for the institutions themselves, it is incredibly profitable to be in an elite status, gaining a lot of value by having that position and not delivering enough value, and hence being vulnerable to new entrants. This is the thesis. This is the situation that we're in right now, according to Clayton Christensen. Let's take, for example, the high school situation in San Francisco that I'm particularly exposed to right now through my son. The high school system in San Francisco is such that you have a public and a private. The public used to have a merit system, where there's one school called Lowell, which had a merit system. That school had very high academic performance. It was full of high achievers. The placement that school was delivering into colleges was very, very satisfactory. So it was a very desirable school in terms of academic achievement. Also, the value proposition for that school, of course, was very good, because you don't pay for it and you still get academic excellence. And therefore, the school was very sought after. The way to get into the school was through a pure merit system. There was a little bit of incentives for disadvantaged families and things like that. But overall, it was a clearly very aggressive, academically driven school. After COVID hit this year, this whole thing was scrapped, and the SFUST, which is the public school system in the city, basically scrapped the whole thing, and now wants to make the system random, like the other high school. The rest of the high school system is kind of random, in a sense that you get assigned a certain school and that's it. And the idea of randomness, of course, is to get rid of all the biases through zip codes and things like that, and to give lower income kids a chance to go and share their schools with higher income kids and all that stuff. Because of that, and because the one school, which was academically very, very achievable, or had very high achievement ratings on the academic side, which is low. Because of all of that, the private school system is proliferating because a lot of people are in a position where their kids are not extremely high achievers, but they want to go to college and all that, but they're not at the level where they can be very high achievers, and they don't want to be exposed to the randomness of the rest of the public school system, with the risk of ending up in a school with a bad neighborhood and lots of very low achievers and things like that. So therefore, the private school system has gained a lot of traction, and there's a lot of private schools with enormously high price tags. Now, in my opinion, what these private schools offer is three things. Number one, they offer safety from being exposed to demographics that are dangerous, that are completely academically unacceptable, things like that. They secondly offer much more, at least that's what they pretend, that they offer hand-holding. So if your kid is not self-motivated and all that stuff, there's more support, there's smaller classes, things like that. And third, what they offer, again, this is marketing. I'm not sure if that's really true, but they offer a better chance for a placement in a desirable college. Now, I would say that looking at this now, let's look at what is the disruptive factor that is challenging that. The disruptive factor is challenging that. There's a couple of things. Again, number one, there's technology. In particular, Khan Academy. Khan Academy is leveling the playing field when it comes in particular to math and in general to STEM. So sciences, technology, engineering, math, computer science, all these things. They're leveling the playing field in the sense that the knowledge is available in very, very digestible bites. So it's not something you have to go and read incredibly complicated books or any of that stuff. Khan Academy is offering a very digestible bite-size knowledge process that helps anybody who has the desire to learn the process and learn the subject matter. So the facts, the knowledge is commoditized. It's free, it's there, it's available. So knowledge is commoditized. Now, knowledge, of course, is not learning. Knowledge is not understanding. The learning and the understanding side are a lot more. And then the third level, which is the implication and the actual execution. So from understanding Python to being able to program a video game or a UI for a Tesla car or something like that, that's a long way. And of course, Khan Academy is not enough, but Khan Academy has the knowledge. And if we add other online sources in that same spirit, like Khan Academy, such as EDX, Coursera, I would say that the knowledge is available. So this is one big factor. So what used to be very hard to achieve. So if you went to a, let's say, mediocre public school in a major city in the United States, and let's say you were unlucky and you really didn't have motivated teachers, you had disorganized administration, it was very difficult for you as a parent or a child to actually get to the knowledge. So the knowledge itself, understanding differential equations, understanding Python, understanding C++, understanding what the Newton's law really mean and read about them, and maybe also go into quantum physics. Whatever it is you're learning, it was hard to even get to the knowledge. Today, again, I would say this is pretty much commoditized. It's available at very low cost, if not free, to anybody who wants to have it. The second part, the learning and understanding part, that to me is something that we humans don't really understand. And I want to get back to David Deutsch's The Beginning of Infinity. If we can't program it, we don't understand it. We cannot program the process of learning and understanding and knowledge. We don't know what that exactly entails. So what the private schools are saying is, oh, well, if you have a good environment of interesting, intelligent kids, then you will also learn better. I would put a big caveat on that one, because again, this is, of course, they're talking their own book. They're kind of trying to sell themselves as, oh, we have this network, and if you have a lot of smart kids around you, then you will also learn better. I don't believe that. I think learning is a very individual, very lonely process where you actually have to go through the process. It's a little bit like wine. It just has to sit and grow and become good. It's the same with athletics. My son is an elite goalkeeper in the MLS academy. You can't just watch other people or play with other people. of course you have to do that also, but you need to just do the work. You need to sit down and train and repeat and repeat and train and train and train and train and train and train. It applies to soccer as much as it applies to academics. So I think learning is a very individual process, and it starts with you. It starts with the individual, and the individual has to have the energy to actually sit down and do the work. And that has nothing to do with which school you go to. So I would say that this is another big disadvantage. It's not something that is new, but in combination with the availability of knowledge, I think it is a threat to the private school system. And this idea that if you go together to school with other smart kids, that you are actually that you're going to learn better, understand better, I think it's really not true. In particular today, in this day and age, where kids can connect through digital media so fast. So if they have any interest, if they have any kind of project they want to work on or anything like that, where they're embedded into something, let's say your child wants to make a video game, your child wants to participate in some sort of intellectual activity, the chances that they find something online is multiple higher than the chances that they find something in the courtyard in the school. Third, the one thing where the schools are proliferating themselves and saying, well, we can place your kid in a top university and all that stuff. Now, I think that is to some extent true because the universities themselves are, of course, in bed with the private. It's all one system, right? So if you're Harvard, you're going to make sure that the feeder schools that feed to you are also feeding the right people to you to maintain this elite status, which means, in particular, very wealthy people and very, very talented people. So you want to have both of those. The talented side, I think, again, if you're talented, if you're one of those people that can get the knowledge and has the ability to learn, I think it doesn't really matter where you go to school because you're going to end up in those elite institutions. And if you're wealthy, then of course then you're in that business where you pay for status and all that. And that is in the end what the academic system is actually selling, which is status. And this is my conclusion about the academic system. I think the academic system is like the Catholic Church pre-Luther. It is selling salvation. Instead of salvation, it is selling status that is actually currency in the job market. And that is what is now at risk. At risk in the sense that we already see data, according to Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, the legendary software developer who created Netscape. He says that within their companies, and they are a big venture capitalist, so they spend a lot of time hiring people, he says that the actual difference between schools and institutions where people went to is very small in the STEM side. So if you hire engineers, technology people, etc., the differences in salary and all that over time, a couple of years down the road, really all equal out because it is a bit like athletics. It matters only, what have you done for me lately and that kind of thing. And I can actually, I can attest that even myself. I went to an elite business school and I ended up on Wall Street, and everybody told me, if you go to this school, you will get this job. And this was all true. But in the end, as soon as I hit the trading floor, it was over. It was only, what have you done for me lately? Now, this gets me to the last point I want to say, and this is, of course, paying for this whole elite status in the private school system gets you hired, but not necessarily retained. So, meaning, yeah, it might be easier to get hired even as a software engineer, but in the end, what matters is, of course, can you succeed and maintain your status and all that, and that is much more difficult, and those schools cannot really help you with that either. So my conclusion is the following. Now, I think that this disruption that Clayton Christensen was talking about is really happening, and it's happening because we have availability of knowledge, such as Khan Academy, and we have also the disruption in the industry, which is a topic I haven't spoken about yet, and even Christensen hasn't mentioned, but this is now my own contribution to this whole topic. I believe that because there is enormous amounts of disruption in the industry, such as Tesla and SpaceX and others, there is a need for a new breed of talent, a new breed of type of entrepreneur-ish thinking employee. And you can't just go and hire from legacy systems, such as universities that's been around for hundreds of years. It is, right now, probably still your best guess, because where else are you going to hire? But over time, we believe that the educational path of people has to change. It has to be a lot more modular. It has to be a lot more adaptive, in a sense that people should learn and work and execute at the same time continuously. This idea that you spend $500,000 on your education without having worked ever, other than internships and stuff, which really isn't work, and then you go and work somewhere. It's I've seen it again. I've seen it on Wall Street. It's ludicrous. It is only possible in an industry that has very little competition, has a monopoly status, has the luxury to develop people over years and years to do the same thing that others have been doing before. So the lack of competition, lack of necessity of innovation, and those sort of things, they are necessary to maintain the system. If you're in a system with rapid change, rapid iteration, rapid necessity to undo what you've been doing, change things, if you're in a kind of market where knowledge is changing, so you have not just you have to acquire the knowledge fast, but you have to unlearn and learn. And so if iteration becomes the name of the game, in that kind of environment, you have to also be more flexible with education. In my view, the way this is going to pan out is that people will have to, instead of indebt themselves and go to school and learn and learn and learn and not work, it has to become a situation where you keep building financial and human capital at the same time throughout your process. So when you're in your mid-20s, which is really your peak performance, by the way, academics such as athletics, same thing, that you're then able to deploy capital and really grow and create something. This is, in my view, the kind of disruption that we're already seeing, and it's going to proliferate much faster. So instead of having, instead of having somebody going to school for 20 years of their lives and then have a lot of financial debt and a limited amount of human capital, and then building that human capital throughout the workplace by rising up the ranks and all that, we believe that the new type of environment will be much more aggressive, where you have to build both financial and human capital so you're adaptive and you can adapt to changes much faster, which means maybe you have to, when you're 25, you have to go back into grad school, do another 2-year master's in biology, because if you want to program cells and use CRISPR to digitize biology, you need to have that. So you need those 2 years. You need to have some capital aside, and we believe that this is in fact a flywheel, where if you build human and financial capital throughout your career, starting in high school all the way to after the college degree and master's and PhD, if you keep iterating and combining knowledge with work and execution, you will again build human capital and financial capital. You will have the necessary flexibility and the ability to adapt, and that you will therefore, as a player, as a human or player in this market called the labor market, you will have a lot more success. What that means for the incumbents is that they will become disrupted, and what they're going to do is they're going to go up market. So you will see even more higher end everything, higher end in terms of exclusiveness, higher end in terms of endowments, higher end this, higher end that. It will just become like the art market, where everybody wants the Rothko, everybody wants even more higher and more higher. So it will become a pyramid where, yes, there will be a very high end and Hermes of schools, but it will become irrelevant relative to what's really going on in the economy, the same way an Hermes bag is irrelevant to what's going on for the clothing market or generally for the economy. And therefore, a lot of players that cannot become the Hermes, so the sort of high-end to almost super high-end, those types of players will face disruption. Only the high-end, so maybe the Harvards of this world, can survive the same way certain churches survived even the Reformation. So to conclude again, I think the Clayton Christensen warning of disruption in the education system is real. We're seeing it right now in front of our eyes, and it's being disrupted by technology, by knowledge being proliferated faster and in a commoditized way, and it's also being proliferated by the increased disruption within industry, which requires a new type of education and employment market. Thank you.